Recording. There we go. Okay, so welcome. So why are we having this? We're having this to explain the travel exhibit and the main exhibit because it is very unusual, not only for us, but in the the art quilt world to have the way that we have split them apart into two different things and traveling and not your typical things. So we thought that with the length of the description of the call for entry, it warranted a longer conversation where you can ask questions and have some visuals to help to make sure people are understanding exactly what is going on. The Sacred Threads board is very honored to have you here with us and to be part of the community and take on new roles within the community. I'm Barbara Triscari, the chair, and I became chair by seeing the textile talk that Lisa did. I was trying to catch up on textile talks and saw the, by then a few months old textile talk. And I thought, well, Lisa has surely had somebody come up and offer to take over. And then I thought, well, what if she doesn't have somebody who's come up and offered to take over? And it kept gnawing at me. So after about a week and a half or two, I reached out to her and said, I'm sure you've got somebody. But if you don't, reach out to me and we'll have a conversation on what it would take to move it to Indianapolis. And she got back to me very quickly and said, no, I do not. Please, let's have a conversation. So we did. And I sent out an email to textile art friends, mostly here in Indianapolis, and said, I'm thinking about doing this crazy thing, and please either talk me off the ledge or tell me I'm going in the right direction. And very quickly after that email went out, Pam Mick, who is now the exhibition chair, who is driving to Ohio to see her daughter at this very moment, so she's not here with us. She called me and said, Barb, what do you need to make this happen? And I said, well, the last piece of the puzzle for me is knowing that I'm moving away from Indianapolis, that if I bring this to Indianapolis, that it will be able to survive me leaving and have longevity here. And she said, done. And her can-do positivity is absolutely inspiring. And she immediately said, well, I have this friend, Deborah, and she is just as excited about it as I am. And she's willing to do whatever is necessary. And so she is the secretary. Although she is the secretary, she does much more than that. She keeps us in line and checks regulations and rules and gets us going. She's the one who's sending out postcards if you need postcards for your area about the call for entry. I'm not sure if you all can see her, but Deborah, please wave, and if you wanted to take a second to unmute yourself and say hello, you're more than welcome.
Yes, my experience indirectly with Sacred Threads started about 8 years ago when Vicki Pignatelli did a presentation at my local traditional quilt guild, and I was fascinated with her concept and how she came about evolving Sacred Threads. And so to me, it's the epitome of what one would want to accomplish in the quilt world, in the fiber art world. So I'm very happy to be part of the organization and to be able to contribute to bringing this to Indianapolis.
Thank you, Deborah. That was terrific for you to share that. So we're very grateful to have you and appreciate, your hard work from Florida. You don't have to be here to care about the mission and be able to help out. So we appreciate all your work. And then last, but very much not least, is Lisa Ellis, whom most of you will already know as the chair for about a decade. She is now the treasurer, and again, very much not just a treasurer. So she is the keeper of all the tech knowledge. And if you have a tech question, she is our go-to person. So you can still feel free, if you are filling out a form and it is not working for you, to reach out to her. You can reach out to any of us on the board, but she's going to be the one we refer to if it's a tech question. Lisa is the reason why I was able to say yes, on top of Pam and Deborah's support, her being willing to stay on to make sure that we get everything figured out as we're able to figure it out, and slowly pull those training wheels off for us. So, you know, she's dedicated a lot of her life to making sure that Sacred Threads is a success, and has no plans to just walk away from it without ensuring that it succeeds. Lisa, did you have anything you would like to say?
I think the only thing I'd add to that is just what a joy it's been for me to be working with this new board. You know, it was such a blessing when this team decided to put their hand up and say, yes, we'll do it. And it really has been just such a pleasure to get to know all of you and to see how incredibly capable you are, and just to know that Sacred Threads is in such great hands. So it's just been a joy to work with you all through this transition. And I am excited about staying involved because I do love Sacred Threads. So having this kind of minor role is, you know, makes me very happy because I do love it, and I'm so happy to see it continue.
She says very minor role, but don't let her fool you. Thank you, Lisa. We really appreciate it. And you know, looking at the history of Sacred Threads, you know, is incredible. Started out with Vicki Pignatelli in Ohio and her team of dedicated volunteers that then passed it on to Lisa and her dedicated team in Virginia. And we're trying to build here in Indianapolis. As I said, I'm not going to be here too long. So build a structure that can have it evolve with rotating chairs and committees, so that we can hopefully give it a permanent home here in Indianapolis. So we'll see. We've got a great textile community here in Indianapolis, great spiritual community, and arts community. So we think it's going to be a good fit. But you can go to our website, sacredthreadsquilts.com, and find the textile talk that got me started looking into taking over Sacred Threads and bringing it here, and the documentary, and so much more. There's videos of some of your stories and your quilts that are there. The call for entry information is there as well, amongst many other things, such as the travel exhibit. The reason why we're having this again is to explain how a normal call for entry has worked in the past and how it's working this time. And hopefully we will be going back to, I don't see why we wouldn't, going back to the typical next time. But so normally what would happen is you have a call for entry, everybody submits, you jury in the exhibit, and then if you have a travel exhibit, pare that down to generally smaller pieces that can be rolled into a crate and easily shipped around together as a cohesive subset of the big main exhibit. So that's how it's worked in the past, and most call for entries, and the travel exhibit will travel for 2 years, is how we've done in the past. So this time, the main exhibit will be in 2025. We're trying to aim for that same approximately 230 quilts, and expected to be summer or early fall. And as we are in talks with a venue, we are honing in on September. So if everything goes as the trajectory is right now, it will most likely be September. And if you are getting the newsletter, you'll be the first to find out when we finalize. So if you're not already on the newsletter, which most of you should be since you got the link to register, you can do that at sacredthreads, quilts.com. Okay. So because of moving here and Lisa not knowing what we were, the future of Sacred Threads, where it was going to be, she had pitched to International Quilt Festival in Houston, the preview travel exhibit to be debuted there. So that would keep Sacred Threads in people's minds and keep the momentum going, and hopefully everything would work out to have that bigger exhibit in 2024. So when I came out and I said, I don't think we can do 2024, I think we've got to do it 2025. She said, well, what do we want to do with this exhibit that I've pitched? Do we want to keep forward with that pitch, or do we want to pull back? And I said, I think it's a good idea to continue with it. It keeps it in people's minds. We don't have any gap year that way. But then that makes a mess of the normal logistics. This time we are doing a preview travel exhibit that will debut at Houston. And then it will come back to travel a bit, come back to Indianapolis to be with the main exhibit. So all of the quilts will be together, and that will be included within the approximate 230 quilts that will be on display here, hopefully in the fall of 2025. And then after that, they will go back to traveling on the road for 2 more years until the next cycle begins again, hopefully back to the regular model. So just a little snapshot here of the schedule, which you can see on the Sacred Thread website. I've got the current travel exhibit that's out there, and you can see it's traveling until the fall of September 2024. And then the new preview travel exhibit will take over here in 2025, and with the debut in Houston, going to the Indiana Heritage Quilt Show in Bloomington. And if you're not familiar with that show, it is an open call for entry. You can call, and they have good prizes too. You do not have to be a member of anything. You can submit. And the Umpqua Valley Quilt Show in Roseburg, Oregon, and then coming back here to Indianapolis to join the main exhibit. And then it will begin on the road again. So as you can see, they can be very well traveled. This is just the end of the 2022 exhibit and the beginning of the 2024. So, and we still have many more that will get scheduled in there. So your quilts can be more traveled than you in most cases. I know mine end up being more traveled than me. Okay, so how will it work? So the travel exhibit call for entries is open right now. The deadline for that is April 30th. The quilts will be rolled to fit in the crates. And because of that, the dimensions are different than the main exhibit call for entry. So the limit is 38 inches in one direction. So that can be 38 in height or 38 in width. So long as it can be rolled to fit within that 38 inches, then it could be considered. So we know that can be a little confusing with an or, and the way it's worded, sometimes hearing it makes it a little easier to remember that it's that 38 in either direction. So the call, as I said, is open. You can enter up to 2 quilts by the travel deadline of April 30th. And with that also comes the early bird pricing of $15 per entry. So you can submit those at April 30th. We'll close that off and we'll begin jurying it. And then you'll either be selected or not selected. If not selected, the entry will still be considered for the main exhibit. So it will go into that next pool. If it is selected, then it will begin traveling and travel for 3 years, coming back to Indianapolis for the main exhibit. So the main exhibit call for entry ends in January 10th, 2025. So anything submitted from April 30th, well, it would actually be the next day to January 10th would be considered for the main exhibit. And of course, anything that didn't get accepted to the travel exhibit is in this pool as well. So the fee for those are $20 per entry, and you can enter 2 quilts. So with that, if you were to enter 2 in the preview exhibit and then enter 2 in the main exhibit, you could foreseeably have 4 quilts entered. We don't expect that most people would do that, but it is a possibility. The dimensions for that, the big thing to know is 108 is the maximum we can do in width or height due to the hanging mechanisms. We have a suggested perimeter between 80 and 288. Now we say suggested because just like you, we are quilters and we get frustrated when our piece is just shy of that, you know, size requirement. So we leave a little wiggle room there for you, but we also are giving you kind of our target. So if you submit something that's small, it has maybe a little bit less chance of getting in because it's got to be able to hold its own against bigger pieces. But we want to be able to consider it and not leave something that, you know, could really fit well in the exhibit. And we want to give that wiggle room to you to be able to submit pieces that might fall outside of that. But again, you've got to keep within that 108 inches. So we know with all this wording of suggested and minimum and maximum perimeter and, you know, all of that can get a little confusing. So we thought it would help to kind of distinguish that again verbally. And there is a chart on the website that that will break things down into travel exhibit and main exhibit. Okay, so that's the gist of the call for entry. So does anybody have some questions? Lisa, have we had any that came in already?
We have one question. Phyllis has asked 2 questions. The first one is about dimensions, although she put this question up before you covered it. Hopefully it's super clear now. So Phyllis, it's not 24 inches, it's 38 in one dimension, but that's just for the travel exhibit. The main exhibit, it's 108 in either. It has to be less than 108 in both width and height. So Phyllis, hopefully that answers that question for you. The other question Phyllis had is about titling a quilt or naming a quilt. We don't really have any guidelines or suggestions on that. You know, there's a lot of conversations that artists have about naming a piece. And, you know, my personal thing would be to give it a name that adds to the visitor's experience. So, you know, a piece that's called Untitled is pretty uninspiring. So encourage you to think about it. What I have seen is it's a great conversation to have with your friends. Your artist friends, is if you show a piece and then you have your friends help you brainstorm, that can be a really good way of generating some ideas that you haven't had. Facebook is also good for that. I've seen people put up a quilt photo and ask friends on Facebook to give them ideas.
Well, can you hear me, Lisa?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
My girlfriend said, oh, I've never submitted a quilt to you, but she said, oh, you have to put it in a category. And I'm looking through all your paperwork. It's either joy or grief or sadness. And I said, I haven't seen that anywhere.
So the themes, yes, the themes are joy, inspiration, spirituality, healing, grief, peace, and brotherhood. You should see that on the call for entries page. It's also kind of in our mission statement. So that's different from the name of the quilt. That's the category. Yeah, you will choose a category.
Okay, so I do need to choose a category where
Yes.
my quilt falls into, and then naming it is my own. Okay, thanks. Thank you very much.
Good
Lisa,
question.
can I just ask a point of clarification? It seems like I remember, and this may be wrong, that there have been times when you, in past shows where things got moved to another category if you felt it was a better fit. Is that accurate?
That is absolutely true. That can come about for two reasons. One is we might feel that, in fact, the category that the piece really does speak better to a different category. Sometimes we do it from a curator's point of view as the show is being laid out. A
Okay,
piece might fit better if somebody puts something in healing and we have pieces in grief that are similar in scale or color or theme. We think from a curator's point of view that in the layout, the piece actually talks better to its neighbors being in a different category. So sometimes the curator will move a piece to a different theme to make the whole exhibit stronger. So it kind of happens both ways.
is that on the entry form, the theme?
Yes, you will choose a theme as you're entering it.
All right, thanks.
So Luana is asking whether or not there's an environmental theme, and there isn't. Luana, that's a great question. Often we do get a lot of environmentally oriented pieces, and sometimes it can be a grief piece, depending on the perspective of the artist. Sometimes it's an inspiration piece, and sometimes it's peace and brotherhood. So we do get a lot of environmental pieces, and it really is kind of the heart of the artist in which category that the piece ends up. Another question, Paula Straw's asking about who the juror is. The jurying is done by the committee. So we don't have an outside juror, similar to different from how Studio Art Cult Associates juries. Sacred Threads is juried by qualified members of the committee. Ann Marshall's asking 38 inches or less on one side. It does not need to be exactly 38. It just needs to be 38 or less. Yeah, 38 or less. It has to be rolled up. So a 20 by 20 piece would be fine. 38 by 70 would be fine. 39 by 70 would not be fine. Is that clear, Anne? Just ask it again if that's not clear. It's 38 inches or less. Any other questions? And also, if anybody wants to just pipe up, that one's fine too.
Okay, I have a question. As far as a piece that is somewhat abstract, is the artist statement taken into account as to whether it fits into that theme?
So let me back up and with that question about the artist statement, let me make a really important point first. And that is that the artist statement is as important as the artwork. Sacred Threads is all about the story, about how poignant the piece is, the artist's heart. So the artist statement, when the jurors are looking through the work, they are looking at not only the piece, but they're also looking at the artist statement. The artist statement is very important. Whereas in other exhibitions, the artist statement may or may not even be read by the juror. It's all about the visual impact of the artwork. In Sacred Threads, it's all about the art statement. Okay, now your question about the art statement, can you repeat that?
Well, you've answered me.
Okay.
It was
Okay.
whether, because if a piece is somewhat abstract, then the artist statement would be necessary in many cases, I would think, to give meaning to it. could be very personal imagery.
Artist statements are very important. Yeah.
Thank you.
So
Go ahead.
would you go over the 108 inches? What is the biggest parameter we can do?
108. If your quilt's 109, it'll drag on the floor, or it would run into it's the size of the drape, the height and the size of the drape. So 108 is absolutely the max a quilt could be.
So my piece is 33.5 by 45. So that's,
Fine.
Well, inside, well inside.
oh, well, that's 157 for the perimeter. So
No, 108 is not the perimeter. 108 is the width.
oh, okay. All right, good. Thanks.
And
Yeah,
Lisa,
that's exactly why we're doing it, because we have all these numbers floating around and it gets confusing with the, width or height and maximums. And yeah, that's exactly why we're here. So thank you for asking that.
and Lisa,
So-
you're referring specifically to the larger exhibition. The
That's
travel one is 38 inches max on each side. Is that
Not
correct?
on each
No.
side. On one.
Our side. Okay, thank
So
you.
let's try this again. On the travel exhibit,
Good.
let's just forget about the perimeter, okay? Forget about the perimeter. Let's just put that aside. For the travel exhibit, the maximum on one side is 38. Okay, because the quilts have to be rolled. Let's, go back up to the crate size.
Yep.
So I can roll a 38 by 70 quilt along the 38 dimension and it'll fit in the crate. It might be bulky, but it'll fit in the crate. So anything, 38 by 20, 20 by 20, 20 by 25, 20 by 30, all of those will fit. But 38 is the absolute max in one dimension. Okay, that's the travel exhibit. The main exhibit, the max is 108, both width and height due to the size of the drapes.
On each side.
On each.
Well, width or height, yes. Width or height. It has to be 108, but don't think about the perimeter.
Oh, okay.
So one thing that I had looked at previously in making a quilt is the maximum is 288 inches. So if you want to think about making a quilt that's 5 feet wide, for example, what would that be? It'd be 120, right? You'd have 60 and 60, and then you would have the remaining amount of total perimeter area to work with if you wanted to make it the biggest size you possibly could. So you might find it a little bit helpful to think about it in terms of your dimensions. I know I've seen other entries for other shows. We just had this with an exhibition where people found their piece was too small or too big as they were filling out the entry form. So it might help you to do a little bit of a layout and some sketches and so on before you get started.
Yeah, I think the suggested perimeter really is just a suggestion, and I wouldn't get too wrapped up about it. When you think about and how the exhibition looks, if somebody makes a 12 by 12 piece and it's next to a piece that's 72 by 72, you won't see the 12 by 12. It's just too small. But if somebody makes the most perfect 12 by 12 we've ever seen, and it's got this incredibly heartfelt story, we're not going to throw it out. You can enter it. The suggestion is really just to we're trying to create a cohesive exhibition. And so it's good to have pieces that, the scale and the sizing are consistent. So that suggestion is just a suggestion. So I wouldn't get too wrapped up about that. The other ones, the 38 inches is because it's got to go into a crate. And the 108 is because it's got to be put up on a pipe and drape and we don't want to drag it on the floor. So those are hard and fast. The perimeter, I wouldn't get too wrapped up in that. It's just to kind of give you an idea of typically what the size of the pieces that look good together.
Do you publish the artist statement with the quilt?
Yes, there's signage at the exhibition. There's also a catalog.
Great.
There's some other questions about Kathleen Decker's asking about whether or not the committee also submits work. Anybody that's involved in the jurying would not submit work. So no, committee people that are a part of the jurying process would not be submitting their own work.
Yes, that is correct. But what we are hoping to maybe have space for is the opportunity for committee members to have a display that is there, but not in the main exhibit. So if we have space for it, we are all quilters too. So, you know, we hate to not be able to be included. So that is a possibility that we may try if the space allows. So we hope that that won't limit somebody from volunteering because they want to exhibit. Yeah, it is a disappointment to be on the committee and then go, realize that you can't be included in it with all of the work that you're doing for it. So yeah, keep that in mind. And I see that Heather Schnell has her hand raised. I don't think we've heard from her yet.
Hello.
Hi, Heather.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. Yeah, I just had a question about mixing art with multimedia fiber art installation pieces. I recently worked on a piece that was molded to a human's body with wire, with a quilt underneath it, and then embroidery bringing it up. So it very much became a quilt as the base of a human form. And these kinds of pieces I feel might be a little experimental. But I was wondering about the dimensions, because the dimensions of the 36 actually are pretty good and close to my previous work that I'd like to expand on. But it's the fact that it would be maybe 12 inches deep and then couldn't be rolled. Like a lot of the metal work, you know, would be very temperamental to package.
Yes, well, it sounds intriguing, Heather. I'd love to see them.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, at this time, we are not doing dimensional pieces, especially for the travel exhibit. Just because of the space, as you mentioned, you know, we don't want anything that could be damaged when we crate it or as others at each venue handle it and repack it. So there is some logistical issues there, as well as for the main exhibit, because we have limited space to lay things out in prep. So dimensional things then take up more space and have to be handled a little bit more delicately. They can't just be stacked with everything. So at this point, we feel that we're not ready to take that on. But as somebody who likes to experiment herself, I would love to be able to see some of that in our future. So, you know, as we find the venue and see what our possibilities are, we may be able to expand to that into the future. But for right now, we're going to stick with, you know, trying to keep everything 2D and, you know, packable easily. But I would love to hear from you if you would like to send me an email. I'd love to have a conversation with you. One of the things that we do is have a community project, and that can oftentimes be dimensional. So maybe we can have a conversation and come up with an idea for the community project. And maybe, you know, toss around some ideas for the future. So definitely send me an email and we can have a further conversation. Thank you. I appreciate you being here asking the question.
Yeah, thank you so much. I will reach out to you and look forward to that. And thank you for presenting today and answering all of these questions.
Oh, sure. Thank you.
I think it's probably worth just repeating that we use the Studio Art Quilt Associates definition of what is a quilt, and it does not have to be quilted with 3 layers. It is a pretty broad definition. So a lot of fiber art meets that. It's something that's layered and stitched. If you just think about it, it's something that's original and layered and stitched. So it doesn't
Here, I
have
just found it. Yeah, the definition is a creative visual work that is layered and stitched or that references this form of stitched layered structure. So while we generally use the term quilt, it does not technically need to meet that traditional definition of a quilt.
There are some more questions in the chat. So we have, how much do you want an explanation of why a piece meets one of the criteria? You do not need to provide an explanation of why you've chosen a particular criteria. What I would say is if you select your theme, let's say you choose healing, then when you write your story, your artist statement, it should be clear from your artist statement why that is appropriate for healing. So it would be a part of a healing journey that you're writing about, but you're not actually explaining why you chose healing. You want to just provide your story, and it would make sense why you chose healing once we've read your story. Hopefully that answers that question. There's also a question of how do you define spirituality? Spirituality is open to all faith traditions. So it's a pretty broad category, actually. And what spirituality could mean to you would be an appropriate interpretation. So you can take that word spirituality, you can define what that means to you, but it is open to all faith traditions. It is okay to enter a quilt that was not previously accepted. Absolutely. There's no date, there's no made by date. So you absolutely can enter work that you have previously entered that there wasn't room for in a previous exhibition. And then there is a suggestion from Maud that, yes, committee work could be in the catalog. Absolutely. You know, when we produce the catalog, there could be a committee section so that the committee work could also be in that. All good questions. Are there any questions that didn't get answered?
Guys, I'm trying to find the call for entry for Sacred Threads.
Well, there's a link in the presentation there. If you go to the main website, there's a menu at the very top over on the right. And when you click that, you can see all of the pages and you can find the call for interest page.
Okay, the one that's in front of us, Sacred Threads, sacredthreadquilts.com, CFE.
Yeah, call for entry, CFE. Yeah.
Okay, all right, thanks.
But there, it is included in the menu at the top. Also.
And I think there's a link. Is there a link on the front page too? And I think there's a link there, but yeah, it's definitely there, and lots of information within that. We've got some videos. Good, and a chart, and we'll have this link to this recording will be there as well once we get that uploaded. So if there are no more questions, I'll go to my final screen, and my contact information is there if you have questions as you move forward. So I wanted to thank you on behalf of the Sacred Threads team at this point for making Sacred Threads what it is. We wouldn't be here without you. And also to thank our Sacred Threads sponsors. You know, they continue to support us despite our uncertainty of the future of Sacred Threads and where it was going and what was happening. So if you support them, be sure to say, you know, I appreciate you supporting Sacred Threads, and eQuilter 9-patch fabrics and artistic artifacts have been very generous with Sacred Thread through the years and through this uncertain future as we move forward. So we look, as the board, we look forward to starting this new chapter of Sacred Threads in Indianapolis. And we thank you for your support and look forward to engaging with you all in this new role with Sacred Threads. So thank you very much.
Thank you,
Congratulations, Lisa and Deborah and Pam.